What's up, guys? You got another episode of the Three Beardmigos coming your way. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about change. So we're going to start off telling you some stories of change in our lives. So I'll go ahead and just start since I'm talking. The time I grew up in, there were people and they were split into, let's say, different types of nations. There were things they focused on in life. Some people were really all about what water could teach you. Some people were really into the air, earth, or even fire, right? And we kind of all gravitated towards that. And you could even say we had a special ability with it. And we all lived in peace and harmony. And everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Hey,
and from there,
hey, Josh, have you
Yeah.
heard this story before?
I think I have heard this story.
what is it then?
Is this the plot to The Last Airbender?
Fine, if you guys' stories are so great, you go ahead.
I
All
mean,
right.
it's an all-timer. It's an all-timer of a cartoon.
Yeah,
But
and I don't have any stories of change, I don't think. So you go ahead, Josh.
the Fire Nation did change everything. But I believe that Aang can change the world.
Change the world.
Leave my cabbages.
And the cabbages get destroyed, and there will be no war in Ba Sing Se. But moving on. So a time where things changed quite quickly for me. If you're watching this, you might know that I'm pretty big into Ireland. I love Ireland. I love missions in Ireland. I maybe have invited you on a mission trip to Ireland, like Ben.
If you've had a full conversation with Josh, he's probably talked about Ireland at some
Probably,
point.
at least one point. But so this last time I went to Ireland on a mission trip, we were told the entire prep time that we were going to be doing a VBS, probably. That we should be preparing for a VBS. Even like a week before we were getting over there, we were supposed to be preparing for a VBS. And so the whole time we're working on preparing a VBS. And we're talking with the team and trying to figure out things. And when we get to Ireland, like the first day we're there, we're having a conversation with like our host. And he tells us, so I know you've been told you're supposed to be doing a VBS. That's not happening anymore. We're not doing a VBS. And so like the whole planning and everything we've been talking about was just gone. We had to completely change our plans, and it worked out. It was a really great trip. We got to really help people. But, you know, sometimes life just changes in an instant, in a second. And Andy, you got any stories of change?
I do. I'm kind of sad because mine's nowhere near as serious as yours.
Well,
But it's by far the best one.
it's funny.
Because let's just say, for me, when the Fire Nation attacked, that was really rough on my life. For Josh, you know, things turned out well, but it was rough for a while, you know, having that change. For Andy, it was for the best, man. I'm very excited for you to tell this.
Yeah, so let's talk about lifelong change, right? So those of you who know me know that Andy is not my real name. My name is Carl. I go by Andy because for 16 years, if you looked at my birth certificate, now there are differing stories between my mother and everyone else in my family. So I'm going to tend to side with everyone else. I muted myself, sorry.
Yeah, you did. I was like, wait, don't know.
So when I was born, November 19th of 1984,
Are you sure it was not January?
I don't know why I said January. It's
Andy,
probably
do you know your
because-
birthday?
Well, I was looking at my calendar that still says January in my office. When I was born in November 19th of 84 at 9:02 p.m., when the nurse asked my mother, what would you like to name your beautifully fat, hairy, redheaded son? My mother says, Carl Andrew Crow. And they said, great. And she goes, but I want it spelled different. I want it spelled Carol. For those of you who are keeping track and score at home, that is Carol.
Carl.
So My whole life, the first day of school sucked. Teachers call and roll, and she's like Jimmy Carter, Christy Cook, Carol Crow, and she would look at every little girl that hadn't raised her hand yet. And so I'd just sit there and wait, and when she's almost ready to count me absent, I'd raise my hand, and I'd be like, it's Carl. My name is Carl. I go by Andy, please. And so all the way up into my sophomore year of high school, my history teacher was calling roll, and I did the normal, hey, that's actually me. But with him, because he was a coach and kind of a goofball and maybe not smart, I convinced him that there was a little accent mark missing. And my name was Carol. I was French.
Pretty sick.
And then for my birthday, your 16th birthday, everybody gets cars. And so my mom hands me a little box. And I'm like, oh, this is it, boys. I got a car. Like, there are definitely keys to this car in this box. And I am pumped. And then I open the box, and there is a piece of paper kind of folded up, and I touch it, and it's thick paper. And I'm like, ooh, it's the title to a car. So I unfold the paper, and I look at the paper, and then I look at my mom, and I smile real big, and then I look back at the paper, and I've got friends. My girlfriend is sitting there, and I'm like, all right. And like 30 people in this little room. And they're like, well, what is it, Andy? And I looked up, and all I could say was, I'm a real boy. Because I got my name legally changed from Carol to Carl. So that, my friends, is my change story. As I went from Carol to Carl, and it feels good to be a real boy.
So now you see why we made Andy go last, because there's no way anyone wants to follow up that story, because it is fantastic. So we're going to be talking about seasons of change in our life.
Also, if my mom is listening, I love you. Please don't be mad.
Wait, so I want to hear, like...
What's her story?
What's her story? Yeah, but I'm a little confused. What's the differing stories?
She said the nurse just spelled it wrong. Like, she said it was the nurse that did it. Everybody else in my family says, no, your mom spelled it wrong because she wanted it spelled different. So instead of adding, spelling it with a K, K-A-R-L, I don't know, like Carl Winslow, who is a boss. Nope, we're going to add an O and an extra L.
I mean, maybe she was doped up since she just had a child and she thought she said that, but in reality, she was just so out of it. She's like, but I want you to spell it the correct way, C-A-R-O-L-L.
I don't know. God love her. Tylenol knocks my mom out for 3 days. So
yeah.
Maybe she saw into the future and wanted you to be associated with Carol Baskin.
Oh, no, thank you. No.
Your new nickname for me is Carl of the Bells. So I'm proud of that one.
I'm gonna go ahead and change my name to that, if you don't mind. Oh no, it won't let me change my name.
Josh, you have the power.
Josh changed
Manuel. So while they're changing his name, I'll go ahead and introduce. We're going to be talking about change today, seasons of change in life that people go throughout. Mike Cabbages. He changed his name to Mike Cabbages. But we're going to be going through that, and then through each point, we're going to be comparing it to what someone in the Bible went through and a similar change. So one of you guys want to run with it? What is this youth group? What is this youth group? All this silence?
Don't call me out. I nominate Carol.
All right. Well, let me just get my bells going here. So graduation, right? For a good chunk of society, they've graduated, whether it's high school or whether it's college, within the last, couple weeks. I know here in Terre Haute.
Or middle school.
Or like elementary school or preschool graduation.
I don't celebrate 8th grade graduations because you're still in youth group. I may have offended some people with that, but that's okay.
Hot takes over here on the Three Beardmigos.
But I'm primarily talking college and high school because those are two of the bigger changes that you're going to go through. I had some seniors. I had 3 seniors in my church, my old youth group that I still love to death. Had a couple seniors in it, and then some people I know have graduated college. These are big changes. And so as you look at your life and you try to figure out, well, what's next? What am I doing? Why am I here? Mom, can you make me a bowl of cereal? At some point, your mom's probably going to be like, you just graduated high school. No. Right? Because my mom did. But, again, I love you, Mom.
So that's today's topic, is we're going to teach you how to correctly pour a bowl of cereal.
Are you a milk first guy or are you a cereal first guy?
Cereal first, absolutely.
Thank you.
What if I'm a no milk in my cereal kind of guy?
Depends on the cereal.
I don't like milk.
That's what Rachel does too, man.
What?
I don't drink milk.
Okay, we're gonna rabbit hole this, folks, so stay tuned. I'm okay with that to an extent. What cereals are we talking here?
I mean, I like Reese Puffs.
Yeah, I think those are probably pretty good dry.
Like Apple Jacks.
Okay, see, we're good then, because
I don't eat like Life or like Raisin Bran. Like, what are you talking about? I eat the good cereals, man.
All right. Let's get back on topic here. Scared me for a second, man. I was worried about your salvation.
Oh, Jesus didn't drink milk. Well, he probably did, but
I bet he might have.
Maybe it was unpasteurized though, so it was gross.
I mean, I don't like milk either. Don't get me wrong, but I'll eat it in cereal. So, but with this season of graduation, and you're looking at the next phase of your life, and you're kind of at the bottom of the rung, and you're wondering, how do I get up, right? And you start climbing that corporate ladder, or you start climbing that ladder to where you're not just that freshman in college anymore. And so with that, we thought David, right? King David in the Bible came from a lowly shepherd and then worked his way up, and maybe not the easiest way, but he became king and one of the more notarized kings that we know. He wrote a good chunk of the book of Psalms, and so
slayed his 10,000s.
Yeah, he slayed his 10,000, man. Saul slayed his thousands with David.
Yeah.
David was the boss, man.
He had some mighty men.
So all that being said, General, if you would be so kind to tell us a little bit about David.
Whoa, throwing me under the bus.
Sure, yeah.
You really poured the milk in before the cereal on that one. That's all.
If you're General Iroh, you're gonna talk about some tea.
Some tea, dude. You know what? It's fitting because I absolutely love tea. Hot tea, cold tea, any type. The best tea I've ever had is called Mystic Dragon tea. So, and it was that tea where you had to put it in one of those ball things and cook it in there, because there were the little tea. I don't even know it's like the tea debris that you put in there. It's not like a tea bag. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so tea. Wait, is that you and your pastor?
I think so.
Well, anyway, you guys are not tea connoisseurs, and neither am I, because I don't know what the tea ball is called. I just know that tea tastes really good. But yeah,
no for me, dog.
You guys, you're so unsophisticated. You don't like milk. You don't like tea. What do you just drink soda all day?
Dog, I am from
or water.
It's sweet or nothing.
I don't drink coffee either.
It'll stunt your growth. I'm still hoping.
So tell us about David.
My bad.
You guys are acting like I got off topic here. Anyway, so with King David, he really did have a bit of a graduation of his own in his life. He was a lowly shepherd, and they needed someone to step up at a certain point. I would think at the point he was at, he was not feeling worthy. He was not feeling ready for that next step. And I think a lot of you could probably feel like you apply to that, whether you are someone going in from high school into college and you're like, I don't know how to start living on my own and how to start doing things without my parents. being there, or going out into the real world and being expected to go into the profession that you studied for. A lot of you guys are probably thinking like, I don't know that I'm ready for this either. Like becoming an official adult, that's a big step. David had to have felt that way too. He had obstacles thrown in his path. He was the one who ended up slaying Goliath. He was the one who ended up doing what everyone else was either too scared to do or had failed to do up until that point. But there was something that got him there. Josh, you want to expand on that a little?
Got something that got David.
We're really in sync today, guys, as you can see. We're just like passing it off to each other, and the person's not looking, and the ball just hits them in the face. They're like, wait, what?
We definitely started much earlier than we're used to.
You can't be hitting with those no-look passes.
This is before we're all awake, guys. We had some other stuff going on today.
Basically, what I was saying is David knew that God was going to be with. I thought we were at that point as Beardmigos where we could finish each other's
sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But then I remembered, wait, if I have a sandwich, I always finish it myself.
Yeah, I don't share sandwiches, man.
Yeah. I mean, I finish a lot of Rachel's sandwiches, but she does not finish many of mine. So anyway, what I was saying is when he was going to have to take this big step up from a lowly shepherd to being a king, he knew that if he had his faith in God first, things were going to work out, right? We just look at the things
exactly.
he conquered in his life. Yeah, Josh was going to say that, but he's like, you know what? Ben should probably eat his own sandwich. This is kind of weird. So, don't want to catch the Rona from sandwich.
Yeah, I don't want your germs, man. I'll make my own sandwich.
So, yeah. So, keep rolling, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Besides me.
Yeah.
And then, with graduation being talked about and kind of fresh on our minds, along with graduation, especially this year, right? We're quarantined.
Hey, run that back, Andy.
Run it back, man.
You super cut out there.
Do I need to repeat myself? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to start back from my spiel.
That'd be good. Yeah, that'd be
It's not going well.
It's not. Graduation being fresh on our mind. I mean, at least we're I can't even think of the word now. We're very open with how stupid we are. I mean, we're three youth pastors just wanting to have fun. So, but that being said, with graduation being fresh on our mind, especially this year's graduation, right? Class of 2020, class of the quarantine. You finish school at home without toilet paper, wondering when things are going to go back to quote unquote normal. But
yeah.
I don't think they are anytime soon. But we want to talk about like current world situations, how things have fluently changed. The one thing that we keep telling or being told is, we have to be fluid with this situation. Because one minute we're flowing, straight west, and then we have an earthquake, and then boom, we're going south. So things change, and things change quickly, just on ahead, right? And when we were talking about that in our pre-show, which I feel like we're still on our pre-show because, man, but we were talking about Saul and how Saul was a bad dude, right? He persecuted Christians. He was not a fan of those who called themselves Christians. He was the Jew of Jews. Like, he knew the law. He taught the law. He practiced the law. He was a very righteous individual as far as his terms would go. And so he was on a trip. He was walking up the road with some henchmen, and he was going to go capture Christians, tie them up, and bring them back and throw them in jail. Right, and then all of a sudden, this light shone, and feel free to do some sound effects for me, guys. This light.
Oh man, Josh's was good. That was a good one.
It really was. And a voice started talking to him, but he couldn't see anything.
He blind.
He was blind, man. He was blind, and so Anyway, long story short, he found Jesus on this road trip to persecute Jesus. And he went from being Saul to Paul. And for those of you who don't know who Paul is, he is like the disciple evangelist of disciple and evangelist. Like, he was sold out for Jesus Christ. And that happened within a matter of a light shining in his eyes. Right? He went from killing Christians and finding fun ways of torturing them. Like, he was there when Jesus was put on trial. And then to go from that and okaying different stonings and crucifixions and all of this, to change his name from Saul to Paul. And if we were smart, we'd have the meaning of those names, but I bet we don't. And completely changed tracks, did a complete 180, and became this lover of Jesus and a lover of both Jew and Gentile.
Yeah, and some to go on, I think Josh is doing some Googling. I was going to let him talk next, but I'm going to let Google do its thing for a second. While he's doing that, looking at Paul, the change in his life was not something that he expected. He didn't wake up that day and think, things are really going to turn around here. And that's really how change comes across in life. And when change starts to happen, something we all start saying is, I just can't wait for things to get back to normal. I just can't wait for things to go back to the way they were. And something we don't realize is that's just not something that happens. Things don't go back to normal. What we get from change in life becomes the new normal. Josh, as you're Googling, resulted any fruits?
Yes, it has, man. I mean, I knew this already, but
yeah, off the top of his head.
Reconfirming my suspicions. The name Saul means prayed for or asked for, because, as you know, the first king of Israel was Saul. He was the one that was asked for and prayed for. But his name was then changed to Paul, which means small or humble. So he was the humbled one after that, after his encounter with Jesus.
Very fitting.
It was.
Yeah, and so to go along with the new name of Paul and people waiting to go back to what was normal to them, a lot of times, once change happens, that change is really for the better. It makes life smoother, makes life at that time so much better. Paul went from being this anointed one or someone who thought he was the stuff to instantly being humbled and realizing that what he needed wasn't himself. What he needed was Jesus. What he needed was to explain to others who Jesus was so that they would one day spend eternity with him. And so things weren't going back to normal for Paul. And anybody that had met Saul and then met Paul realized that real quick. I mean, even in the story where that happened, he was waiting in a house, and Ananias was supposed to come, and God went to Ananias and was like, hey, there's this dude named Saul. I'm sure you know him. Why don't you go help him? And Ananias was like, no, I'm not about that life. And he tried to pull a Jonah. But he went because of his faith and realized that this new normal that now Paul had was so much better for him, for everybody else, and for Paul than what it was when his normal was Saul.
Yeah. I think something that we've kind of been beating around the bush but needs to be said is, I think for a lot of us, we sometimes think that change is a bad thing, that change is inherently bad. But it's really not. I mean, growing up, I could tell you that I hated change. I hated any form of change. When I had to move in, I think it was 3rd, 4th grade, I hated it. When we had to give our dog up for adoption because we were moving to a place that couldn't have a dog, I hated it. I hated really any form of change. If my parents came home and said that, hey, something's going to be changing soon, I hated it because I thought that change was bad. And I think we all sometimes inherently think that change is bad, but it's not. Change is a natural part of life. And the Bible tells us that God is actively seeking to change us, to try and make us more like him, to try and give us faith that matters, because change is a catalyst to growth, and change is a catalyst for what comes next. And talking about like the stuff going on in our world today, right? Like some of the COVID stuff and some of the other stuff going on, if you're watching the news with protests and riots and all that stuff. Change that comes from this thing is not going to be bad change. It's going to be good change. It's going to be change that changes our world in a positive way. You know, like if I never have to shake somebody's hand ever again, it's a great change. Hot tip. I just don't like handshakes, man. You know, like I'd rather hug somebody than shake somebody's hand.
I was gonna say, do you like the hug it out where you do the smack and then the
I mean, I like the bro hug, you know, but
yeah.
like just shaking someone's hand and like people judging you on how firm your handshake is, like that's dumb, man. Just hug. You know? Or like if I never have to go and sit in a meeting that could have been on a Zoom call ever again, it's a great change, you know.
I tell you, I used to laugh. We had a meme at my old job that we would send out when we'd have to get on a meeting. And so I was in HR, and every other HR person was in another location. So my boss sat in South Bend, her boss sat in Omaha. We would get on, and then me and a buddy of mine who was in an office next door, we'd always hold up a meme that said, "Thank you for having another meeting that could have been an email." And now because of this, that might happen a little more often.
There you go.
Yeah, people are going to realize that you don't have to shake someone's hand and you don't have to have a meeting in person.
And, you know, the change that's going to come from what's going on in the world really just depends on how intentional we are about making the change a good thing. Because if we do go in all negative about change all the time, then we aren't going to get the best out of the situation. Change can really be good about changing your perspective and how you see things. I'll keep this short, but I didn't tell a real story about changing my life because I wanted to say something stupid in the intro. And
you came up with something.
With that. But when I actually did move in high school halfway through, I didn't want to move. I didn't want the change that came along with that of being in a new town, having to get a new group of friends. But it really did make me change how I looked at people. It made me change my personality that I'd formed. It just changed me a lot for the better. But it didn't do that until I started being willing to look at how positive change can be in life. And what you guys said with all the craziness going on in the world today, there's a lot of good that can come from it. If nothing else, it needs to change our perspective of looking at things through a lens of love, looking at things through a lens of looking for positivity in tough situations. And I think a lot of people have already gained some positivity out of this situation. And I think we're going to not take things for granted as much anymore. And I think that is going to be a good thing, that hopefully looking forward, we're people who are less expectant of stuff being handed for us and realizing that we just got to take advantage of what life gives us. So let us kind of segue us to our next point if one of you guys wants to hop on it.
Yeah, I think change that's really impactful is change that affects us personally. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but God is always trying to change us. He doesn't want us to be the same person that we were yesterday. Because the reality is, if you read the Bible, we're sinners. We're in a state of separation from God. And the cross fixes that separation and we're saved. But there's this process that the Bible talks about called sanctification, which is a big word, but basically it just means being more and more and more like Christ. And God is constantly trying to help us change so that we become more and more and more like Christ. He's going to hopefully convict you of the sin and the wrongdoing that you have in your life. James talks about how we should consider it joy when we face trials of many kinds. For trials build perseverance, and the perseverance is what God desires within us, right? God wants us to have a faith that can persevere through hardship, and he wants us to recognize our sin, and he wants us to always be better Christians, to encourage one another, to love one another, and to help lead other people towards Christ. It's a constant walk of change, and which is why we understand that change isn't bad. Change is a good thing. I'm personally reminded of a story in the Bible where Jesus shows up to this well to get a drink of water, right? And there's this lady who's there when she's not supposed to be there. And Jesus is like, hey, I know why you're here. And she's like, huh? And she's like, I know that you've had 5 different husbands. Oh, and the guy that you're shacking up with right now isn't even one of them. And, Jesus calls her out. But then he also tells her to, one of Jesus' famous lines that he consistently tells people is to go and sin no more. Right? That's change. Jesus is pushing us to change. And that lady, we don't know exactly what ends up happening to her, but we know she goes from being a social outcast and a pariah in the town, Scarlet Lady, to then going in and telling people about Christ and being a witness for Jesus. And she brings people back to meet Jesus. That's change from one encounter with Jesus. Go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to piggyback off that because there are some of you that are listening who might feel like that woman at the well. Maybe hopefully you're not doing the same thing she was doing, right? But you're kind of the cast off. You are the one that nobody pays attention to. You're the one that sits in the back of the class and please God, don't call on me. And to know that whatever is in your life can be taken out, right? You can recognize what's wrong. You can give it to God. And in God's eyes, which, let's be honest, those are the ones that matter. In God's eye, you're no longer that kid who is on drugs. You're no longer that kid who used to steal bubble gum or whatever it is, whatever your sin is, you're no longer that. You are a welcomed family member, right? You are into the family of Christ, and the sin that defines you on earth doesn't define you to God. And if we can all just look at life in that matter, it'll kind of make earth look a little more like heaven, right? When we can all see each other. We talked about it in our last podcast. That was much deeper than what we're doing today. But that Imago Day where we recognize that people have that image of God on them, which gives them worth. And so when we go and sin no more, that's not saying that we're never going to screw up again. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I woke up this morning, and some point between this morning when I rolled out of bed and this morning to where I'm sitting right here right now, I've probably screwed up. But it means that I am man enough to own that I'm going to ask for forgiveness, give it to God, and try to do better. And that's what Jesus is calling us to do. That's what he meant by go and sin no more. 1, you're going to try not to screw up anymore. And 2, you go and tell people about him, man. Is that going to make you like one of the social butterflies? Probably not. But it's what we should be doing.
Yeah, and I mean, when we say that God wants to change you, don't take that as like he wants to change your personality. He wants to change the good things about you. That's saying, yeah, your actions, your thoughts, your attitude, the things that are
your
should
name.
be changed about people.
Change your name from
your
Carol
name, man.
Carl.
The best kind of change. We actually, it's funny, we were in youth group, we were talking last night about how Abraham and Sarah got their names changed from Abram and Sarai and why and stuff. And we talked about if we'd want to change our names. And I said I'd want something way more unique than Ben, but I wouldn't want to hurt my parents' feelings by changing my name. But apparently it did not hurt Andy's mom's feelings to get a new name. So
Go ahead and feel free to tell your youth group that story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm making a
Hopefully they're watching
mark.
this podcast. So yeah.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, the change in us, there are things that do need to be changed. Our actions when we make the wrong actions, our thoughts when we're thinking the wrong way, our attitude when we're not looking at things the right way, or when we're choosing to constantly look at things in a negative light than looking for the good to come of something. Like they said, he's constantly looking to change that in us. So
Yeah, and then to wrap it up, I mean, just to go from our points to this, we all get shook, right? We all are shaken at some point in life.
Excuse me. We
Tell
all
him,
get
Josh.
shooketh.
Sorry, my bad. We all get. Let's use
Okay.
Use the king's English.
So we all get shooketh in life, right? We all goeth through things that make us question who we are, that make us, are we good enough, right? Am I able to do this? Am I able to do what it is that I think I'm called to do? And we really worry. And if we're being honest, a lot of us try to get out of it. I know that coming to the church I'm at now, that shook me trying to get through that, because I knew this is what God was calling me to do, but I was super comfortable where I was at, right? There was more stuff that went along with that, but I was shook to my core trying to figure out what I needed to do and how I needed to handle that, especially now that I've got a wife and 2 kids, and it's not just my decision anymore, right? And so the story that really stands out with this was, when you're shook and you don't feel qualified, and shooketh, and you don't feel qualified, and you really want nothing to do with what it is you're called to do. Let's look at Moses. Moses was put in a basket and let float down the river because his mother didn't want him to be killed.
Oh no, did we lose Andy again?
I think so. Oh, no, he's back.
There we go. So Moses was put into a basket and was sent down the river so that he wouldn't be killed. And Pharaoh's daughter found him and raised him as her own. And so he grew up in this lavish palace. He was what's up, right? He had what he wanted, when he wanted it, how he wanted to have it. And God called him to something else, which, there was a little more to that, and he left all of that. But then God called him back and was like, hey, I need you to go stand up to Pharaoh. He wasn't about that life. He tried to get out of it. It shook him when God was like, hey, yo, you're going to go tell Pharaoh what's up, and I'm going to be with you. And he's like, I can't do that. I don't like talking to people. You're going to do it. Oh, I have this stutter. That's fine. You're going to do it. Well, what if he kills me? Well, you have this stick. Make it a snake. Right? And so everything that changes, we always need to realize, we have something to hold on to.
Yep.
Right? We have that handrail for stability in our lives. That as we're walking and going toward the cause that God has called us to, we recognize that He is our stability. That He is the one that will, even though the ground is shaking around us, will keep us firm in His hand.
It's a good ending point, I think, man. That's a good point to end on.
Yep. When change gets you shooketh, hold to God for some stability. Boom.
God never changes.
That's the shirt of the episode.
He's the same today, yesterday, and tomorrow. I think. That sounds right.
That's right.
All right.
I feel like that's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, sorry for our early morning antics, but we love you.
I'm not sorry. I had fun.
Yeah, it's a good time.
It was a fun episode.
I like when we mess up.
We're probably going to get a lot of comments on how bad we are, which reminds us, go ahead and drop some comments, like and subscribe.
Yeah.
All of that fun stuff.
Tell us if we're stupid. Tell us if we're smart. Tell us if Andy's dumb, but not Ben and Josh. What?
Let us know some changes in your life. So, yeah, put in the comments, what are some big changes that you've went through that you've had to hold to God or hold on to God to stabilize it.
That's a good point. We love you guys. We will see you next
Three
week.
Beardmigos out. Last word.
Are we not doing this whole thing?
Last word.
Oh,
yeah. Love you guys.
And you even started the heart and you're
I
not
know,
doing
Ben
it.
forgot the heart. All right, we love you.
Love you guys.
It's like a C, you know. Yeah.